Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are trialing a new format of open evening at the moment. We're calling it Ask Me Anything. So this is really about you rather than me giving a presentation. And it's mainly about the questions that you ask and that you my sort of talk prompts you to ask during this time we have together. So the main event essentially is at the end when we have our Q&A, and you can ask me anything about the course, I should hasten to add. So thank you so much for joining me. I am Lydia Hamlet, and I'm joined here this evening by several of my colleagues who are in the background or visible. I have Jonathan Littman from Professional Services, who supports me very well on the MST in History of Art and Visual Culture. Jonathan, do you want to give a wave? Brilliant. And Jonathan will be monitoring the Q&A, and will be answering questions as and when they arrive, and also feeding questions to me to answer at the end. I'm also really happy and grateful to some students from the course for joining us today as well. So I've got Cassie Lowe, who finished the course and graduated last year, and has kindly come back to talk to us, and also Adam Shaw, who is a current student in year 2 of the course, who will be giving us his experiences as well. So if you have any questions that are more student oriented and you want to ask them how it really is on the course, please do put those questions in the Q&A as well. And I'm sure they'll be as honest as they can be at the end as well. And just to say that we are recording this session, so it will be up online. Some of you may have already seen the course video that I've recorded, and that really should be your go-to for all details on the course, how to apply, what the sort of expectations are in terms of your application, and all those details are in a video online already. So as I said, I'm just going to go sort of run through those details really, give you an outline, and perhaps that will prompt you to think of any other questions that you have for us to talk about. So you're all here for the MST in History of Art and Visual Culture. We've been running this course since 2022, so I can't believe it, but we're now in our 4th year of the course, and it has been really enjoyable to teach really every year, and we get more and more people who are interested in it every year as well. So it's a very exciting to be course leader on. The course itself is 2 years and it's part-time. So you can do the course alongside a professional, so a job essentially, either whether you're working full-time or part-time, or whether you're just studying for pleasure as well. You can fit it into your time. Year 1 is involves it's teaching intensive year. So we have 3 in-person residential modules that are held in Cambridge, and mostly at Madingley Hall in the north of Cambridge, and they're assessed by 3 assignments, written assignments, so 1 assignment per term. And during this year, this is really when we're sort of giving you that teaching support that you need. Perhaps you haven't written essays in the recent past, and this is when you'll be sort of practicing getting back into academic work again. Year 2 is when you sort of launch yourself into your research on a topic that you're really interested in and really passionate about. So this is your dissertation year, and you have expert supervision from a supervisor, and they will give you supervisions which are dotted throughout the year 2, and you'll also have 3-day schools where you present your research to me and to the other tutors on the course, and of course to your peers as well. During the whole 2 years, so from the beginning of the course when you matriculate to the end when you graduate from the course, you will be part of a college community as well. So this is kind of a second layer of community that you'll have in the University of Cambridge. And I'll talk a little bit more about the colleges in a minute. And Matt, our marketing colleague, has provided us with a brilliant QR code here. So if you're interested in reading more about course fees or funding that might be available, please do make a note of that and have a look there for that information. This is all on my video, but just to go through it quickly, we teach thematically. So each of the terms in the first taught year, we have a different theme. In term one, we think across media, so thinking about intermediality and how different artistic, visual, and other genres interact with each other. In term three, we look at art and the environment. And in term two, we look at art and the environment. And term three, we look at the visual cultures of activism. And the dates for those are set well in advance, and here they are. So if you're thinking about joining the course, do put those in your diary. It may be necessary to book time off work or other considerations. So here are the dates that they will be on. This is a sample residential timetable. So this gives you a sort of indication of how busy these residential courses are, and I'm sure that Adam and Kathy will attest to them being very full, intellectually stimulating, but also quite exhausting. You can see that there's a lot of travel, a lot of socializing, a lot of visits, sometimes in the evening too. We either go out for a visit or we'll have a guest speaker and dinner. We tend to sort of pack a lot of activity into these days. We go on lots of lovely trips to into Cambridge to look at the museums and to go behind the scenes in archives and libraries and all sorts of things. Those activities vary from year to year depending on what we're teaching, but that just gives you a sense of what it's like. So thinking about your application, you'll have to provide a personal statement, which gives us a bit of background and context to your application, why you're applying, where it fits into your life, why you want to do it. Your research proposal will be obviously more focused on your research for the year two, and you'll be telling us a little bit about that. I will actually explain that a little bit further in a minute. You'll have to include a CV, transcripts and qualifications and references. I will go into what kind of references we will need in the Q&A if you have questions about that. I know that somebody has sent one question on that already, so we'll definitely talk about that. These are our partner colleges listed on the right. So currently we're working with Mary Edwards College, which is a women's college with a wonderful art collection in Cambridge. Wolfson College, which is a graduate college, very well set up for graduates and supporting them. And Lucy Cavendish College, which used to be a women's college, but which is now mixed, so provides another really good option as well. We may be expanding in future the colleges that we're working with, but currently these are the colleges that you can attend and be a member of. And in fact, not just during your course, but you will be an alum of that college forever and be able to come back to it as and when you want. So the application deadline this year is Thursday, the 26th of March, and the interviews normally happen very soon after that. So it will be the week commencing the 20th of April. Your research proposal, just to go back to that, because that's the other sort of main element of the application. It's 500 words, which isn't very long, but in that we want it to be quite focused on a particular question, a question perhaps you've been asking yourself for a long time, a topic that you've really wanted to research for years perhaps, or something that's maybe only come to you recently, but something which you've really read around, so you know what sort of question or what sort of area you're going to focus on. So it doesn't have to be a defined question or title at this point, but more a sort of, you have to have a sense that there's some work to be done in that area, and for that you'll need to know roughly what's been written on it already and where your work would fit into that current state of scholarship. Also, you would want to know a little bit, and you might have ideas already of archives or collections that you will be engaging with. We like to encourage this primary research, especially if you're thinking of going on to doctoral study. It's really important to have that sort of original material to work with, and it's going to really up your game in terms of your research outcomes. And you also should have some sense of the methods and approaches that you might use to understand this material. So this is including visual. So you might have a list of works, for example, that you might be looking at, and textual as well. So we can look at that together in a minute, a little bit more if anyone's got any questions about that. So we're on to the student reps, and I think we are going. I don't know whether you've been fed questions already, Adam and Cassie, in the Q&A, or whether you just want to talk about your experience of the course. I'd be very grateful. Cassie, should we start with you, given that you're through the other side, and you're sort of out in the world again?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I offer some reflections on my experience, and then if anything I say raises extra questions, then people can always ask them of me. Um, so I decided to do the MST in History of Art and Visual Culture because my background is in English literature. And I started to have a bit of an appetite to understand the ways of engaging with artwork, and I was really keen to develop the skill sets and the ways of looking and the sort of theoretical lenses through which I could then better engage with artwork. You know, going into galleries, you sort of look at a painting or a sculpture or whatever the material might be, and I wanted to understand that better, right? So there was a kind of a hunger in me to be better equipped to do that. And so that was in part why I chose to do the course. And I have to say, you know, ambitions realized, I definitely feel much better equipped to do that. So I suppose that's worth saying. Um, my experience on the course, I absolutely loved it. I have made friends with my cohort. We all still talk to each other. You know, we're all graduating this year, and we're all still in touch. Just at Christmas, I went to the National Gallery with a couple of friends from the course. You know, we're very much still engaging with each other, and I think that's in part to do with the retreat style of the course. And I think any hesitancy that you know people on the call may have towards that being, you know, gosh, I've got to take off 4 days of work or whatever it might be. I would say it's worth it actually. And I have studied full time for my undergraduate. I did part-time PhD and two part-time postgraduate certificates as well. And this mix, this kind of retreat style, gives you the part-time flexibility with the sort of cohort sense of community building that I think would be absent if it was hybrid or online delivery. That's my sort of personal take. The retreats are intense. You know, Lydia sort of said, you know, you look at the schedule, it is, and they are, you know, you do feel tired by the end of the week, but it's because it's so intellectually stimulating that you're tired, which I think is, you know, a really positive part of the experience. You are stretched, you know, you're challenged, you'll grow academically throughout the week. You come away with more questions, but I actually also think that's a good thing because it stimulates your appetite to want to know more. I think the sessions themselves I'll sort of end on this because I don't want to take up all of the airtime, and I'm sure Adam has also some great reflections to make. But the topics that are explored, I felt quite intimidated by, particularly the sort of the first module because I'm a contemporary girl. That's what my literature studies have been, and I'm very much into kind of critical theory. That's also my strength. Just based on my academic kind of experience up until that point. And I was a bit nervous going into that because I thought I know nothing about medieval or Tudor art or anything like this, and I felt very intimidated. And, everyone has that sort of imposter syndrome of feeling, I don't want to go into this and look silly. I don't have an art history background. All of those kinds of questions were going through my mind. And I remember driving up to Madingley, listening to a podcast, like desperately trying to just know something about Tudor art. And actually, you're taken through it. That's sort of the point, right? You're coming here to learn and to study, and so you get the equipment, you get the ways of knowing, and you get the information that you need to orient yourself in discourses and contexts that may be otherwise very unfamiliar to yourself. um, and I'd also say inspires you to want to know more, in a way that I thought, actually, not only do I not know these subject areas, but I don't really have much interest in them. I've come away and now seek out opportunities to learn more about those subject areas. So I think they sort of kindle flames that you didn't know were possible. So, the subjects that you'll go through, even though not all of them, not everything will speak to you individually, I think the way that they're delivered in those cohorts experience, the retreats, and actually just the academics that come and visit the course, and give lectures just inspire you to want to know more anyway. So that's my sort of my spiel. I hope that's helpful for people. I hope that's potentially stimulating questions actually more than answering them as well. I'm happy to have more questions laid upon me, and I'll hand over to Adam.
Thank you very much, Casey. I'm Adam. It's lovely to meet you all. I'm currently a second year student within the program, so I'm currently writing my dissertation. And everyone has their own reasons, their own journey for coming to the course. But I think one common thread is that love of art, and whether you want to continue to explore that personally, professionally, that is one of the beauties of the cohort, is that you have people with you from across the world. It's a very international cohort who come to the table with very different backgrounds, all stages of life. And there's an incredible amount of learning that you take alone from that. And one of the biggest questions which I had for myself going into the program, for which I could imagine you are asking yourselves, is the fact that this is a program that is designed for people that have very busy lives, be that professionally, you're in full-time employment, be it pursuing things outside of work where you may have family caring responsibilities. The great thing about the course is that Lydia and Jonathan and all of the course directors are fully aware of the fact that everyone is studying part-time and for which you have other responsibilities outside of the course. I myself am in full-time employment, and if you're asking, can I do this whilst I am in full-time employment? Unequivocally, the answer is yes. And if anything, it is a wonderful counterbalance to your full-time job. And as Casey said, it is a hugely intellectually stimulating environment whereby the content of the course is broad, it's varied, it expands your own mindset into areas of art that you never thought you would have ventured over. You'll discover sculpture, you'll discover drawing, you'll discover painting, lots of different forms of artwork, murals, etc., that you may have thought you had no interest and for which you flurry a passion for. And that certainly happened for me, where I thought I was more of a formalist and came away loving contemporary art. So it's a wonderful program for expanding your own mindset, how you think about art, how you look at art. And it is something for which I would highly recommend anyone that is thinking about growing in this space. Yes, you can do it alongside full-time employment. Yes, you will have a fantastic journey. And it's also a program, and we can talk about questions on this, for which you might wonder, do I still get the Cambridge experience if I'm doing it part-time? Absolutely, yes, you will. As Lydia mentioned, you will be a member of a college, not only for the duration of your course, but for life. You can join any college society, you can join events, you can join formal halls that are hosted by your college. There are seminars that take place, lectures that take place across the university, for which you're on all of the distros, for which you can attend anytime you're in Cambridge. You are a fully fledged member of the university, and you will get the full experience that goes with that. So it is certainly something that, from both the academic side of things, you will find intellectually stimulating. You'll explore areas of art that you never thought of before, but equally, you will meet people in your cohort from across the world. You will be able to socialize together, whether it's via the official program that Lydia and the team put together, for which there's a lot of fun elements, going to museums, going to college formal halls, etc. But equally, you do your own things with your cohort outside of the day schools, outside of the program. And as Casey alluded to, it's a very close-knit community for which everyone is very much enjoys learning from one another. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any further questions, as Casey mentioned as well. But unequivocally, it's a fantastic program, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Thank you so much, Adam and Cassie. That's really, really helpful, and I'm sure it's evoked a lot of questions in the Q&A. I'm going to so this is our Q&A. I wonder whether I should stop sharing, Matt, or shall I just leave it like that? And then because you've got sort of the talking heads element here. Brilliant. Oh, that's great. Brilliant. So let's go to the Q&A and have a look what kind of questions we have.
Lydia, while you're doing that, perhaps I could just
Yeah.
kick off. We've had a question pre-submitted and one asked at this session now. And this is really for Cassie and Adam. Can you give us some tips and suggestions on the practical elements of combining work and study? Maybe you could just talk us through, how did you actually go about carving out time to study? So, Adam, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, very happy to. So I guess it comes down to your own individual arrangements, but the way that the course is organized is very much so that you can fit it in. So to give you an example, in year one, you have the three residential sessions, so one per Cambridge term, which allows you to attend over the course of the 4 days, as opposed to having to attend a single day each week for a period of weeks. So the fact that the teaching for the term is compressed into one residential week per term is very, very useful, because it does allow you to take time away from your other commitments in a short period of time to attend, rather than having to split your personal time up over a series of weeks. Beyond the formal attendance, within your own time and your own study, it's entirely dependent to your own work-life balance. But essentially for me, it's a blend of carving out time in my weekend as well as in my evenings after work. And that goes through cycles where, for example, in year one, if you are working on an essay assignment for that particular module, there will be weeks where you are busier, say, than other periods where it's not term time and you're not working on an assessment, and you may just be reading around your own thesis or dissertation, because that point around thinking about your dissertation you should carry throughout your full time on the program, and not just in year two alone. For me, in year two now, where I am writing my dissertation, as Lydia mentioned, we have one day school per term. Very conveniently, that day school falls on a Saturday, on a weekend. So if you have work commitments Monday to Friday, that's not necessarily a day that you need to take time out of work for, because it's at the weekend. But equally, based on your own commitments, you can choose to come up to Cambridge. You can do, as I do, on weekends and evenings after work. So it is possible. It does take time management on your own part, but equally in year two, you will also be given a supervisor for your dissertation, for which you meet with your supervisor, and they can also help you with milestones, etc., throughout your dissertation year. So it's very much possible. It's down to your own arrangements. And of course, the course itself is designed as such that so you can attend, and that everyone has that flexibility to do so.
Thank you, Adam. That was a very, very exhaustive and extensive answer. Thank you so much. Lydia, shall I hand back to you now for the next question?
Yeah, so we have a question about how many students are on the course each year. It varies very much. So in our first cohort, we had 10, I think. Jonathan, you can correct me. I think the next year we had 12, 15, and now we're on 18. So it's sort of going up little by little every year. I think every year has actually been a good size cohort for different reasons. I wouldn't want to get, too enormous, and we don't want it too small. So those have been perfect sizes from my point of view as a teacher, and I think for the students as well. We sort of tend to fit in the rooms nicely at Madingley. Madingley's a lovely place to teach as well. So that answers that one. How much preparatory work is required for each residential? Cassie and Adam might sort of give a little realistic insight into this. But basically, you're given access to the materials a few weeks in advance of each residential, and there's quite a lot of pre-reading to do, I would say, for the seminars and for those sessions. So you have access to those sort of as PDFs and links on the virtual learning environment or the VLE. So there's quite a lot of pre-reading in that sense. There's a bibliography which you can sort of steadily work your way through as well. And some students like to sort of pick the question that they're going to be thinking about and sort of start even reading for that, I think. But I think Cassie and Adam would probably be able to give us a more sort of realistic, honest answer to that.
Adam, you're slightly closer to year one than I am.
Yes.
Do you mind responding to that? I
Yeah,
can't
for
really
sure, for
remember.
sure. Certainly, the way I would respond to this for everyone is that it is very important for you to know that the standard of teaching is excellent, and you will take so much from those discussions, be it the seminars, the lectures. So, as with anything, the more you prepare, the more that you will get out of that. The more you will get out of those lectures, out of those seminar discussions. And the program that Lydia and the team put together brings in various different lecturers from other universities, from institutions within the UK. You get guest speakers, whether they are people in the art world that are coming in. You get alumni from the university that have now entered the art world. So the teaching program is remarkable. And as with anything, as I say, the more you put in preparation, the more you will get out of it. It is also, as I say, being realistic down to your own individual circumstances, how much you can prepare. But Lydia and the team provide you with all of the materials to equip you so that you can pick and choose realistically what works for you going into the residential week based off the reading lists and also your topics of interest so that you can bring ideas and discussions to the table once you get into that residential week itself.
If I may just also add that as a piece of practical advice, I read the readings on my commute to work because I was sort of squeezing them in. I have to say they were always very interesting. They're selected for a reason and sort of, they were enjoyable to read. And so I, doing part-time study and a full-time job would just read like, a few articles in preparation for the week. So if I was to do it by train amounts, it probably took about 6 to 10 hours at a guess to prepare, but that's with kind of reading and making notes as well. So it depends on the extent to which, as Adam said, you engage.
That's a great tip. Thanks, Cassie. The next question, what are some of the outcomes of the completion of the degree? Do graduates often go on to doctoral studies? Yes, and in fact, increasingly more and more we've seen. So I don't know whether it's because the cohort size is changing, but this year I've been writing a lot of references for going on to doctoral study. And the course is meant to prepare you to do that if that's what you want to do. It's also worth saying that not all our students want to do that. And some, like Cassie, have already done a PhD before they come to us. So it really is a very sort of, there's a diversity of student that we teach, and it's not everyone is doing it for the same reason, I would say. So we have some who are doing it for the love of art history. There are some who want to go on to further study. We've had some who've gone on to research MPhils afterwards and are then going on to PhD. We've had some students who have already published their work and been to conferences and presented their work. So sort of building up that sort of academic experience pathway. And I know that Cassie is thinking or has maybe even published some things already. And then, yeah, as I say, we've got more and more students who want to do a doctorate straight away as soon as they finish. So, yeah, it really varies. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks. Perhaps I could just bring in Adam and Cassie. We've had a very interesting question. What have been the biggest surprises along the way, including positive surprises, and any unexpected challenges that you've faced? Cassie, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for me, the big surprise I had in my studies, I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog drinking. Sometimes these things are very well muffled out, but she's a very loud drinker. Um, I think for me, a big surprise was maybe, other than, finding it surprising that I enjoyed quite so much of the course. I have to say, some of it I thought I was going to struggle through, but actually ended up really enjoying it. That was a bit of a surprise. But actually, I think the biggest surprise for me was that I really sort of sunk my teeth into the second unit on the course and ended up doing my dissertation on that topic. Um, and so I found myself getting a passion for something that I didn't really think that I would necessarily have. And so that was great, and ended up doing my dissertation on a particular artist. With whom I'm in regular contact actually now. That's wonderful. And my dissertation is now inspiring him to do work in the area that I sort of wrote about. So, which is really wonderful. This is all very surprising and, wonderful stuff. So I'd say that was probably there. My biggest challenge is probably more personal, that I've done, as I said, 3 degrees part-time before coming to do the MST. And I sort of probably underestimated how much caring responsibilities for my mum would impact on my studies at the weekend. So I've always sort of assumed my weekends were nice and free and open, but actually they became quite compressed with that. Not insurmountably, but I think it's worth sort of saying that was a factor I wasn't really sort of prepared for. That was a challenge for me to overcome.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks.
think on my side, the biggest surprise, it's somewhat mundane, but depending on what stage you are at academically, and by that I mean if you only have going into the course, let's say an undergraduate, or you've already done a master's, or whether you've already completed a PhD, or in fact whether you have stepped away from academia and you're returning to academia after a number of years, you might see some of the assignments of a 4 to 5 thousand word essay is quite daunting, or a 12 to 15 thousand word dissertation is quite daunting. The biggest surprise for me is that in reality, writing that number of words isn't the big challenge. The big challenge is trying to cut it down, because you realize that you will be writing more once you get engrossed in a topic, and you're trying to bring your word count down into the limit, as opposed to trying to get 4 to 5 thousand words on a page. Because I was certainly someone that was coming back to academia, having been in the workplace for a number of years, and that challenge and perhaps fear of an academic essay was what was one of my biggest fears going into it, but for which I was pleasantly surprised that once you engross yourself in the topic after all of the teaching and the learning, that the biggest challenge is cutting your essay down to size. I think one of the challenges, and we've alluded to this already, is that this is a 2 year course, and over 2 years, life happens. Things are going to happen. There'll be various different things. You might change job, you might get married, you might have something that happens with family. But the good thing is that the course team know that, and they are there to support you. And there's various different support mechanisms where you are assigned a college tutor within your college yourself that is there for all your pastoral needs. You then have Lydia in terms of the course director for any academic concerns. You have Jonathan on the PACE team for any concerns. There are a huge number of resources, and they are an open door and an ear that is always listening. So they make you feel comfortable if anything arises, because they too understand the fact that life happens, and this is a 2 year part-time program for which things will happen outside of the course, but they're there to support you on that journey. I think that's one of the most comforting things to know when you're embarking on the program.
Great. Thanks so much, Adam and Cassie. That's really helpful. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A about supervisors for year 2 for the dissertation year. And somebody asked if you change your mind about what you want to write about in year 2, so if you change your focus from your original research proposal, how easy is it to change? The answer is that when you first apply, I don't take people on if I think I won't be able to find them a supervisor. I need to have somebody in mind, either in Cambridge or an expert outside Cambridge, because we can do that at PACE. We can look for outside experts as well, which is the beauty of it. We probably will be able to find you a supervisor on pretty much any topic. But once that's sort of in place, if you during the first year have sort of second thoughts or you want to change your focus, it has been done. we have managed to sort of reassign supervisors, but we can't guarantee it. So I think we take you on the basis of one topic, but we realize, as Cassie and Adam have just said, that life happens, things do change. The first year hopefully does also change the way you think about art history. So you might indeed have new areas that you want to look at. So we try our best, but we can't guarantee that you can change topic. But I'm fairly confident that we can find supervisors if you want to change, but we can't guarantee it. How many set meetings do you have with your supervisor in year 2? You have 5 hours, which doesn't sound very much, but this is really sort of expert supervision. So you're getting a lot during those times. I know that some students, including possibly Adam, like to split those hours into sort of 10 shorter sessions. So you can do that if you like. But you have that, you sort of, at the beginning of the time with the supervisor, you'll kind of plan those times out together, which works, which times work best for you. And you can meet online, especially if you're, live a long way away, or you can meet in person. So it's really up to you and the supervisor.
While we're on the subject, Lydia, of supervisions, there's been a
Yeah.
question about where do the dissertation supervisors actually come from? What's the selection process? How are they allocated?
They are either Cambridge lecturers, either in the History of Art department or in another department, because obviously we cover lots of different areas, including visual culture. So they could be from another department or from a museum. They could be a curator who's, working on that particular area. We can also go outwards and look beyond Cambridge, if you can believe it. If there's a particular person who's really working in that field who is elsewhere, we can also ask them to be a supervisor. Again, usually academics or curators or people working in heritage organizations. And those people are people now that have been working with us for a few years, or people. I've worked in heritage and museums and research all over the UK, so I've got a good sort of idea of who we can call upon, and who the best person for you is. So a lot of my job is academic matchmaking, thinking about who would be the best person to supervise a student. So
Thank
are
you,
there any
Lydia.
other supervisor questions, or
There's one about advice before selecting a research proposal. I think we touched on that, but
Yeah, I mean, we looked at that. I think that you have to have a strong sense of a question, what's been written on that topic before, how you personally are going to go about studying that area. So do you know, for example, of some materials, some archival materials, or some other materials that have not been looked at extensively, or have you done a bit of reading and you found something in a footnote where the author has said, oh, this needs doing, this is a gap? You have to have quite a strong sense of what's been done already and what you can contribute as well. Can you expand a thesis focusing on research gaps? For example, a project paper. Yes, in fact, I think that's what I was. So the question is, can you expand a thesis focusing on research gaps, for example, of a project or paper that you've previously researched for the dissertation? Oh, I'm not quite sure what way round that is. CJ, could you give a little bit more detail? If you can, in the chat, because I'm not quite sure whether you're thinking about what you go on to do after the dissertation, or whether you're thinking about something that you've perhaps read in the first year for your assignment, and then you're thinking about, then you've sort of spotted a research gap, and that sort of affects what you do for your dissertation. I'm not quite sure about that. But I think wherever you find your research gaps, that's fine. And it's good to run with them and think, okay, this hasn't been done. Sometimes you can learn from your supervisor or one of your tutors or course directors. They can sort of point you in a direction. They might be a very busy person who doesn't get time to sort of do all this research that needs to be done, and they can kind of give you a question to run with. Cassie.
I don't know if this will be helpful, so I'll start talking and hopefully it will clear up some questions people have about the how do you formulate your research question. Um,
Mm,
I would say that there are sort of two, or two, also there's probably several, but there's a couple of ways that come to mind to me about how one might go about this. The first is that you could look at a particular work that hasn't really been studied before, and you can provide the kind of history, the context, and the sort of understanding of that. So that's one kind of way you could approach something. One of the peers on the course looked at these amazing wall murals of milk witches in the Isle of Gotland, in just off, the kind of mainland of Sweden, and it was so niche but so interesting. And she really, she traveled there and she went and she explored these wall murals, photographed them, catalogued them effectively, and provided some history and some information on them. I mean, it was a endlessly fascinating topic. I mean, Google them if nothing else, because they are really interesting, milk witches. And then the other way was to potentially look at something and give it a fresh look, a fresh pair of eyes, and the way in which that's often done. I'm sure Lydia will be able to expand on this. The way in this is often done is through looking at it through a particular kind of critical or historical lens that hasn't been considered before. And so I'll give my dissertation as an example. I was looking at the sculptural works of Jason de Taylor. He makes these amazing underwater sculptures, and to look at them with fresh eyes, kind of find that research gap. I explored them through the eco Gothic as a lens. What does it mean to be, an eco artist operating with kind of quite Gothic themes? And I pulled out some Gothic themes and explored them in that kind of critical lens sort of way. So that's that. I hope that sort of provides some insight. It might be a text, or when I say text, I mean kind of anything, an object, or an artwork that you're particularly interested in, and you find a new way of looking at it, or you notice something someone hasn't noticed before. That's always quite exciting. Or it might be that you look at something that hasn't been studied before, and you provide that kind of art historical context for it. I hope that provides some insight there.
that's great. So how, because there are different ways of doing it as well, but it's helpful to hear one sort of practical way that you've done it, because I think it is difficult to articulate sometimes. And going back to this question earlier that I was struggling to understand, but I have reread it since and now understand it. But can you sort of go on to do something that you personally, in your own research or a previous project, have identified as a kind of gap? And that is the answer to that is definitely yes. And that's really ideal if you've done some initial research, just as Cassie was saying, and then you sort of think about a different way that it could be done, or so you unearth some different materials that you could look at. That's really the ideal. Yeah. So the answer to that is yes. And sorry for not understanding originally. What does college matriculation involve? Um, it basically, it's when you formally become a member of a college community, and you are sort of written into the college history. You have to sign a special book, and you have to wear the gown and all that kind of stuff. You have a special dinner, and you meet everyone in the college who's matriculating at the same time as you. But matriculation is the first sort of ceremonial you'd have in your college, and the graduation is the one that marks the end of your course. So yes, that's basically what it is. To what extent can a thesis be interdisciplinary? I would say, and I hope Cassie and Adam would agree with me, that it can be very interdisciplinary to whatever extent you would like. For example, are conceptual or theoretical approaches that draw on philosophy or technology studies supported, or is the expectation primarily archival based? No, it's not. That the expectation is not primarily archival based at all. It could be part of your study or not at all. It really is up to you to choose your sort of methodology that you want to take and your approach, and that will be really driven by your own interests and also things that are available to you for study as well.
It's probably also just worth chipping in on that to say, um, the object, the art object you're studying has to be foregrounded though. So I think peers of mine have tripped up by focusing more on the kind of theory and less on what is the real focus, which is the visual analysis. So don't, lose sight of that for being interested in sort of, you can bring them in and they can help shape, but do make sure that the primary focus is the visual.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Yes, your approach to the visual can be theoretical, but it's got to have that visual element in history of art and visual culture. Um,
May I just bring in, we've had a question about the museum and art gallery visits in the first year. I was wondering, Adam and Cassie, if you could just reflect on what did that involve and maybe what did you gain from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very
Adam.
happy to. The reality with the schedule is that most afternoon sessions involve trips into Cambridge from Mattingly, which is just on the outskirts of Cambridge, a beautiful teaching venue, whereby you will then visit a museum or a college to look at their particular collection. So in many instances, it is the museums such as the Fitzwilliam, such as Kettle's Yard. Then you view college collections. Lydia mentioned Murray Edwards already. So you are using essentially everything that Cambridge has to offer, which is a huge amount between all of the college collections plus the museums themselves. You also go to other museums beyond what you would assume to be the natural art galleries. So you go to the Archaeological Museum. There are a host of museums for which you attend. The Scott Polar Museum is another one. So you really do benefit from seeing not only a slice of Cambridge, but everything that Cambridge has to offer in this space. Because the fact of the matter is, everywhere you look in the city of Cambridge, there is something beautiful to look at, whereas the architecture, the art, the sculpture, both publicly around Cambridge, as well as the sculpture that exists within college grounds as well. So that's been, for me personally, a really fun component of the course, because it's that blend of being in the classroom, so to speak, but also getting out of the classroom and going on walking tours within Cambridge, visiting different sites. And it really adds a blend to the week, to the day, that keeps it interesting, that keeps it varied, and you're not just sitting in a room 9 to 5. That is not the case. You are out and about, you are putting your visual analysis into practice, and you are learning from all of the different museums and galleries and college collections that Cambridge has to offer.
Thank you, Adam.
I also
Okay.
think that the collections that are available are kind of quite astounding at Cambridge. And it's an 800-year-old institution, and it really is so surprising the types of things that you get to encounter on the course because of that. So one fond memory of going to Corpus Christi and getting to handle illuminations in a manuscript from the 900s, and you kind of can't believe that you're physically touching an object like this. So what's really exciting about Cambridge is just the wealth of things that it has, as Adam has already said.
Thanks, Cassie. Just wanted to go back to the day schools because we have had a slight update since Adam and Cassie were both on the course with us. In fact, the day schools for the cohort that will be starting in October will actually be moving to weekdays on a Friday. So you won't be coming to Cambridge on a Saturday, but you'll be coming on a Friday. Just a small correction there.
yeah.
Lydia, over to
You
you.
won't have the residentials that you have to book out of your annual leave that year. So on the plus side. Great. So a couple more questions coming in. For the residentials, Jonathan, this might be one for you. Um,
Yes, absolutely. So the question is accommodation provided, or do you have to plan or fund that yourselves? It's not provided, so it's outside of the course fees. I would say half the students might choose to stay at Madingley Hall, which is an option, and the main benefit of that is that you're on site. Equally, a good number of students might approach their college to see whether it's possible to get college accommodation. I must stress that some colleges can provide accommodation in term time, others might not be able to. And then a good number of students might be make their own arrangements, typically Airbnbs, hotels, that sort of thing. But it is up to individual students to make those arrangements.
Thank you. So there's a question here about references. Somebody is doing the year one course of our diploma that we run as an undergraduate course online. And if one of the tutors is willing to support the application, would that be acceptable? Yes, definitely. Absolutely. Yes. We love to see students coming up, doing our courses. We have had in the past students do our certificate, diploma, advanced diploma, and then going on to the MST, and tutors all along the way of that journey are happy to support your application for MST as well. Brilliant. I think that we have come to the end of the Q&A, unless anybody has a last minute question they want to ask before I close the session. I can't see anything, but I am very happy to be contacted by email at any point in the next couple of months, but while you're thinking about whether to apply or not. So do let me know and send me an email. I don't know whether Matt's putting my email in the chat. Is there a way of getting my email, Jonathan, or shall I write it in the chat?
Matt, are you able to maybe
I
put,
shall.
or maybe,
I
yeah,
shall write it in the chat. It's one of these funny combinations of letters and numbers that we have at Cambridge, and which you will have if you come to us as a student. And that is the correct one, I think. So that's in the chat now. And I'm very happy, yeah, just to say again, to receive any questions on email. So I think that's all. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you so much to my lovely students, past and present, and to my colleagues as well, for joining us. And I hope you have a very good evening. Thank you.